As many of you know, Derek Lunsford, our 2025 Mr. Olympia, is currently being coached by Chris Aceto. Well, recently I had this clip of Chris come across my feed, and honestly what he said was pretty shocking to me. For some context, this clip is from the 2025 Mr. Olympia, and it appears to be taken after night 1 prejudging, so this is before the results had even been called. I'm going to cut out most of the clip because it's not important, and I just want to focus on what he said about the top 2, mainly being his boy Derek and Hadi Choopan.
My initial impression is, or my final impression is that Derek is too many tools to be taken down.
Yeah. Hadi
Choopan, I think he's overrated. He's got one right leg that's not even there. People talk about his side chest. He has no arms on the side. He has no triceps. They're blown off his body. He doesn't have a great back double. He has a great back lat spread.
Yeah.
So by definition, put him next to Andrew. I don't think it's really a difficult challenge to make the decision that Andrew has a better package at this show.
Quite frankly, I did not expect Chris to be this nasty. Now, I don't watch Chris Aceto a lot, so maybe you guys can tell me if he's like this usually or not. I know he's usually pretty deadpan and matter of fact, but this is just straight up insulting another athlete. Now, I insult athletes all the time, don't get me wrong. I'll own it because that's just what I do. I make videos on YouTube. It's just so jarring seeing Chris Aceto, a top-level professional coach, talk about another athlete this way. Now, he's entitled to his own opinion, and if he wants to be insulting like this, I have no issue with it, but let's call it like it is. I want to make sure we're on the same page about how Chris talks about other athletes because now the gloves are off at this point. Anyway, what's even worse than Chris being insulting is the fact that he's just wrong. Is he wrong because he's propping up his athlete, being a biased coach, or does he really just have a judging philosophy? This video is a response to those claims that Chris Aceto made on Derek and Hadi, and this will be a spicy video, so let's not waste any more time and jump right in. Remember, if you guys like these types of videos, be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Part 1. Chris's claims. Now, the first thing we have to address in this video are the points that Chris made, and he made a few of them. So let's go ahead and break them down point by point. Let's start with what I think is the most egregious claim, or at least the most hypocritical, and that's where he talked about Hadi Choopan's arms.
He has no arms on the side. He has no triceps. They're blown off his body.
Yeah, that's actually crazy that Chris wants to talk that shit about Hadi's arms when Derek quite literally has the worst arms out of the top 5, top 10. Hell, Miss Olympia has better arms.
This is the fucking quality we get. Get the fuck off the Mr. Olympia stage, buddy.
Derek's arms are a disgrace, quite frankly. Inflamed, puffy, no separation, no peak. Honestly, they're the worst of any Olympia champ since Dorian literally shredded his muscle off the bone due to injuries.
A bag of shit that gets bigger is just a bigger bag of shit.
Now, some of what Chris says has some merits. He's technically right about Hadi's triceps being on the weaker side, but he's blowing the issue way out of proportion. Hadi's triceps are not that good. They're even receding a little bit, I get it, but Derek literally has douchebags for arms.
You fucking prick.
And if Hadi's triceps or even just the arms in general are so bad, what about the shots where they're the most present? Most of all, what about the side tricep? Hadi wins. Yeah, Derek is bigger in his tricep, he wins that area, but as Tyler Mannion said, even in the shots that include the arms and are named after them, they're typically not the most important thing. Derek has the condition of a wet paper bag here. The stomach has no detail and the pecs look like ruptured silicone implants. They actually look better here because of the low photo quality, but we can still see he's rocking that signature Derek condition.
Still a bag of shit.
I will concede that it is a closer pose, but I'll take Hadi's more detailed and streamlined pose over Doughboy Derek over there. And also, we have to talk about the side chest. Again, Chris was exaggerating. He said everyone talks about Hadi's side chest. No one talks about it. It's widely known that Hadi's side chest, while not weak in the grand scheme of things, is one of his weaker poses personally. But if you think that's a weak shot, just wait until we talk about Derek's weak poses. Now, in the side chest, I will admit that this is one of 2 poses I gave to Derek in my personal analysis. I think his side chest is a good pose, but Hadi does not go down without a fight here. He's arguably winning the side leg because Derek didn't nail it this time. Hadi also has the more locked-in stomach with more detail, and he's harder upstairs with a decent chest, and he has great width through the shoulders. Derek wins, and yes, Chris, he does win the arm and delt here against Hadi. I know, it's amazing what can be done when you pump your physique full of shit, but I digress. I will say though, if you wanted to attack Hadi on anything, it has to be those delts. But Chris didn't bring that up, so I'll just say this. Hadi's delts are a legitimate issue, but I think Derek's arms alone, from the front at least, are an even bigger one, or at least an equal one. And then on top of that, I think Derek just has more issues in general. I actually want to make a bonus point before we move on to the next claim from Chris. Since we're talking about the side chest, let's go ahead and talk about the chest in general. I mean, this is the only pose where it looks at least decent for Derek. It's downright soggy and flabby in other shots, from the front lat spread to the side tricep. But anyway, This other point from Chris would be a lot more valid if Chris didn't exaggerate.
He's got one right leg that's not even there.
Is Hadi's right leg smaller? Yes, but does it still look decent enough? Also yes. I'd still say it looks pretty good, actually. In fact, as a whole, I prefer Hadi's quads to Derek's. Derek's quads have really unappealing shape. His quads actually aren't that good, but his adductors are huge. And he does the stupid riding the Harley pose, so he makes himself look a lot bigger than he is, but also like a child trying to take a
You're a fucking clown. You look like one.
I also miss the finer details from Derek that you get from Hadi. Hadi has that deeper separation, some feathering, and there's just another level of dryness and hardness compared to Derek. Now, I will say besides the quads, I prefer Derek's legs from every other angle. His side leg was not as crisp at this show, so it was actually a bit closer with Hadi, but let's just say I prefer Derek. Why not? And from the rear, he's better. Derek's glutes are untouchable today, even when he's off, and his quad sweeps and hams from the rear, while not in their best condition, still beat Hadi's overall, and that does include on size as well. So I'm fine with saying Derek has better legs as a whole, maybe, but from the front, I actually prefer Hadi in the quads, which is what Chris was talking about. Hadi has an asymmetry, but it's only visible from the front, and yet I still prefer him to Derek for quality for sure. But also, Derek just looks weird. Honestly, I almost forgot to put this point in the video because it's just a nothing burger. It's not even a point, Chris just felt like saying it, I guess. It's his point about the back poses.
He doesn't have a great back double. He has a great back lat spread.
Chris said this like it was a diss, but it's just really not, like, at all. It's a simple and correct observation. I mean, what the fuck kind of point is that? Okay, so Hadi is good at one back pose and not the other? Okay.
Is this the shit that's supposed to knock our socks off?
Like, yeah, that's usually how it goes. That's how it went at this show. Derek won the rear double and Hadi won the rear lat spread. And those just aren't my calls, by the way. You know who also agrees with me? Tyler Mannion.
In the lower body that you do in Derek's. So for me, I think this is a very clear pose for Derek. Really all depended on how Derek was opening up the lats. And I ended up giving this pose to Hadi, definitely because of the width and how he opened up his back.
I could say the exact same thing Chris said, but about Derek. I could say he's good in the rear double, but not as dominant in the rear lat, which leaves the door open for Hadi to take one of the back poses. Again, it's not a diss, it's just an observation. Chris is just being a hater. If you're just saying to say you're a hater. I mean, I myself might be a hater, but at least I try to back all my claims up. I mean, I make entire videos to prove my points. Chris is just clutching at straws trying to make a case for his client's mid at best physique. I am glad I remembered to put this point in the video though. This kind of just sums up the whole thing. It shows that Chris is just trying to say things to make Derek look better. These claims are pretty stupid, but if he does actually believe them, that tells us something about how he views bodybuilding judging as a whole. And since he comes from an older generation and is popular with that crowd, I'm going to bet that a lot of people view judging the same way. So I think it's worth talking about. Part 2. Judging philosophy and why Hadi wins. Now again, we're giving Chris the benefit of the doubt right now, and we're assuming that he's being genuine in his critiques of Hadi and his praises of Derek, and assuming that he actually judges in a way that rewards Derek. I have to call out Chris's main argument for Derek, his main thesis, if you will, for why he thought Derek should have won this Olympia.
Derek has too many tools to be taken down.
By saying that Derek has too many tools, he's basically saying that Derek has some really good pluses to his physique to outweigh the cons. He's viewing bodybuilding as a tug of war. One athlete has a strength, the rope gets pulled that way. Another athlete has another strength, that the rope gets pulled in the opposite direction. He's saying Derek racked up enough wins to pull the rope all the way to his side despite the flaws on his physique. Now Chris did try to represent his argument. He listed Hadi's flaws and said the opposite of Derek's reasoning. In his mind, Hadi had too many flaws to win and Derek had too many tools. I'd honestly agree with this framework of his judging if it wasn't completely contrived and clearly motivated. I've personally always said Derek has high highs and low lows to his physique. The problem for this year's Olympia package though was that he had way too many flaws and they were too detrimental. A good version of Derek, say the 2025 Arnold Classic version, I would actually be saying the opposite. I will and have defended that version. This Derek, however, the 2025 Olympia Derek, pretty much just had the rear double, the glutes, and I guess fullness going for him. Even that last one kind of f***ed him in other ways. But Derek clearly had a lot of flaws at this event. He still has a lot of poses. I mean, he's just DOA in the abs and thighs, the front lat, and the most muscular, because all those poses showcase his real main flaw, his lack of condition and detail. Outside of the glutes, he was blurry everywhere from a little to a lot. Then of course, he has the other issue of those arms. But I've said enough about that for one video. So yeah, Chris's argument could have been used to support Derek's win here if Derek had brought a different package. I mean, really, what the f are these great tools that we're supposed to be seeing? A great rear double, but okay, anything else? And what's so rich is that he called out out everyone else's flaws, especially Hadi's, but didn't offer any critique of Derek, and believe me, there is plenty to critique. I don't even necessarily hate Chris's judging philosophy, but he's just applying it to the wrong person. If he applied it to someone like Andrew Jacked instead of Derek, then I really couldn't hate. In fact, if I wanted to argue that Andrew won, I would use Chris's argument. Andrew is someone with some pretty obvious shortcomings, but nothing as outright bad as Derek's issues. And Andrew's tools are far more impressive than Derek's. Andrew has 3 knockout shots, the front double, front lat, and abs and thighs. At this point, I'd even add the most muscular in there. It's really freaking good. So that's 4 shots. Then his side poses aren't the strongest, but they're fine. And the back poses may be his weakest shots, but I have to ask, what's weaker, Andrew's back poses or Derek's abs and thighs? This is a textbook case of high highs and low lows, but a version of that actually wins. Andrew has 4 great poses and 4 weaker poses. In Derek's case, he has a couple of peaks, but the rest of his physique is mid at best, often just very poor in a lot of these areas. So yeah, this just goes to show that Chris's argument isn't inherently wrong. Physiques that are min-maxed can definitely win, but he's applying this argument to the worst person. Derek really doesn't have that many tools at all, and some of the biggest problems in the whole lineup. But what about Hadi? Where does he fall into this? Well, Hadi is fundamentally a different bodybuilder than Andrew or Derek. I'm not saying he's inherently worse or better than Andrew. I will say that about Derek actually, but the thing with Hadi is that he's not as flashy as someone like Andrew. Does Hadi have standout features? For sure. The abs and thighs, even the front double and most muscular are really good shots, and the condition from the front is still probably the best out there aside from Andrew. What makes Hadi so formidable though is his completeness and lack of weaknesses. He doesn't really have a bad pose. His weakest pose is the rear double, but even then it's just pretty much average. Again, what's worse, Derek's abs and thighs or Hadi's rear double? After that though, Hadi has 7 poses that are either going to be able to stand next to anyone and hold their own, or some can actually just beat the majority of guys out there. And then again, that condition from the front is impeccable, and the back condition is still pretty good. So while Hadi may not have the highs of Andrew, he doesn't have the lows of Derek either. Even his weaknesses are less glaring than Andrew's. But at least with Andrew, you can compare who has the stronger pros and who has the weaker cons. There's an actual discussion to be had there, but not with either of them against Derek. Also, I have to mention that the most obvious reason as to why Derek shouldn't have beaten either of these two gentlemen was his finals performance. Up until now, I've only talked about and shown media from the prejudging of the contest, which was Derek's better half of the show. And that's what Chris was talking about anyway. So Chris had no idea how things would transpire. I mean, if you think he's coping now, I'd love to see how he would defend that finals version of Derek. He'd probably just say something like, oh, Derek did too much at prejudging to lose the overall show. I mean, regardless if he wants to take that stance or not, there's no way in hell Derek should have won the show with half of it that looked as bad as his night 2. Any detail he had at prejudging and a lot of fullness too just completely evaporated from his body in 24 hours. I've even compared guys like Nick Walker on night 2 to Derek on night 2, and it's not particularly close. So I don't even think Derek should have been first call out night 2, to be honest. And if that was the case, he would have lost too many points to maintain his first place overall. I mean, clearly it's just bullshit. Derek actually did better on night 2 than Hadi did on night 1 somehow, and then Derek also somehow did better than Andrew on both nights. And someone like Nick, who drastically improved in that 24 hours, actually lost a point while Derek lost only 2 points. It's bogus and clearly rigged. And that brings me to Chris's final point I need to respond to.
Hadi Choopan, I think he's overrated.
I think this was Chris's most savage moment in this clip. He was harsh towards Hadi, but Chris saying his entire presence in bodybuilding is overrated is brutal and still kind of funny, not gonna lie. But then again, Chris is still wrong. Now maybe when Chris said Hadi was overrated, he was talking about the sheer amount of people that put Hadi on a pedestal. That I can understand. The only way I can see Hadi being overrated is if you take into account his brain dead fan base, which is massive. And yes, I will attack his fan base, I just don't give a f. The way the Iranian fans defend Hadi is laughable. So if Chris wants to say Hadi is overrated because so many people say stupid things about Hadi like he's the best to ever do it or whatever, yeah, Chris would be right. However, let's not do that. Quite frankly, casual fans and their opinions shouldn't count in the consensus, and that goes for either side. There are plenty of casual fans out there that think Derek won this Olympia. Those are the same type of fans that would tell you Chris Bumstead should be open Mr. Olympia or that Marcus Rule was better than Ronnie Coleman. They get all their knowledge from TikTok. Again, they're just casual fans. So let's just consider trustworthy opinions, or at least serious ones, whether that's Dave Palumbo on RX Muscle or Dorian Yates on a podcast giving his opinion. When we just consider serious people, I think even amongst them, Hadi is underrated. When Chris said Hadi was overrated, he just said that at large. I mean, he didn't specify, so I'm inclined to think he means that Hadi's career as a whole is overrated, or has led to him becoming overrated. On the surface, this is just retarded. This isn't even glazing, but Hadi is without a doubt the most consistent athlete we've seen since Phil or Dexter. Not only only does he have many accolades, but he should probably have more. In the 212, Hadi had 2 pro wins and probably should have beaten Flex Lewis that one time at the 2017 Asian Grand Prix. He did beat Jose Raymond at that show, just FYI. And in Open, Hadi only has 1 regular pro win, sure, but that's because he never needed to do pro shows. He's re-qualified for the Olympia every single time he's done it. In fact, he's never been out of the top 4. And of those top 4 placings, I think some of them are arguable for him to have won. 2019 was winnable for him. 2020, I wouldn't say so, but a lot of that was due to him arriving late, of course. But of course, Big Ramy is Big Ramy. When he's on, like he was at the 2020 Olympia, not very many people beat him. Now, 2021 was definitely winnable though. I think by that point, Ramy just had too many flaws. Then of course in 2022, Hadi did win. And then in 2023, that was just an actual robbery. All those years up until that point, while we could have made the argument that Hadi won, I wouldn't call them robberies, but for 2023, I would. Then in 2024, I think Samson was just too good, but it was closer than people might think. And then of course, 2025 was an even bigger robbery than 2023. And yes, 2025 was a robbery. And on top of those Olympia placings, he has 2 Arnold titles from the Arnold Ohio and the Arnold UK. Derek does technically have 2 Olympia wins now, but neither of them are solid. His Arnold Classic win was the only real one of his wins that should count. And to be fair, that was an impressive package for him, but that only happened once. Maybe Derek will eventually catch up. He has his whole career ahead of him. I think Samson might be able to, but to be honest, I doubt it. Really, no one right now is anywhere close to Hadi or his consistency, and I doubt any of the young guys will have his longevity. And these aspects, the consistency and the longevity, matter a lot when talking about someone's overall career and legacy. I don't know how you can call Hadi overrated when he's as consistent as he is. I dug up an interesting stat that really proves my point, I think. The fact is, being top 4 at the Olympia for 7 years in a row is insane. If I made a hypothetical tier list of the most top 4 finishes, it would look like this. Dexter in S+ tier, he really just deserves a tier of his own. It's Dexter, enough said. I mean, he was top 4 13 times. Not even Ronnie or Phil racked up 13 top 4s. But they each did rack up 10 top 4 placings along with Kevin Levrone and Jay Cutler. So that would be your regular S tier. But then Hadi's going right at the top of the A tier. Again, he's been top 4 7 times, and that's Dorian Yates' record as well. And that 7 times beats many of the greatest numbers like Flex Wheeler, Kai Green, Sean Roden, all of who have 5 top 4 finishes. And again, Hadi should probably have been more than just top 4 some of those years. And also, let's not forget the fact that Hadi is not done. His career is still ongoing. He'll probably have a couple of more top 4 finishes before he retires. Really, I would bet that he will be S tier unless something happens or he pulls the plug early. But anyway, it's clear that Hadi's career as a whole is underrated. No one talks about Hadi like they do a Dexter or even a Sean Roden, but really, they should. In some ways, he's actually better than someone like Dexter. Dexter was always a top 5 contender, but most of the years he just wasn't going to win. Hadi could have won most of the years he didn't. Regardless though, before I ruffle too many feathers, Hadi's career is already an anomaly. He's one of the most consistent athletes of all time, and he's managed to be top 4 7 times in the most competitive era of all time. I'm not saying it's the best era, but I think we can all agree it's the most competitive. At any given Olympia nowadays, you have like 4 or 5 guys that if they show up, could win it. That's never been the case unless it's been an open year. And Hadi coming out ahead all those years really proves how good of a career he's had and how good of a bodybuilder he is. But I want to consider one more metric to see if Hadi really is overrated. Let's ask the question, where does he fall in the best of all time list? If you compared everyone's one peak version, where would Hadi end up? Well, let's get the best version straight. It has to be his 2024 Arnold Classic version. It speaks for itself, so who does that beat? Well, I think we should first ask who it doesn't beat, and we have the obvious answers. He's not beating Ronnie, Phil, Jay, Dorian, or Kai with their best versions. I think there are a few others he probably wouldn't beat, but all in all, he's probably still landing within the top 10 physiques of all time. I know plenty of you will bitch and moan in the comments because I said that, but we all need to grow up and realize that modern guys dominate the best of all time list. And I'm not saying that physique-wise. I mean, if we were ranking that, it would be a mix of Flex Wheeler, Frank Zane, Sean Ray, the like. But in terms of best version to best version on a modern bodybuilding stage, Hadi would probably be top 10. Hadi's 2024 Arnold package was on the slightly smaller side, but he was very complete head to toe. He also had some knockout shots and superb conditioning. At minimum, if you don't want to say top 10, he has to be within the top 15. I wonder where Chris Aceto would put the best version of Hadi, you know, since he's overrated.
What an asshole this guy is.
If anyone, including Chris, tells you less than top 15, they're biased. I hate to say it, but guys like Derek and Samson at their best are also top 15 too. It's just that modern guys are better. They compete later in the history of bodybuilding, so it makes sense. But anyway, to put a bow on this, Chris is obviously just a hater. In no way can you look at Hadi's career and peak version and say he's overrated. Love him or hate him, Hadi is underrated, if anything, among professional people with serious opinions. If Hadi's overrated, what does that make Derek? Because Hadi has a better career and better peak physique than Derek. And even when Hadi Hadi's not at his best, like at this year's Olympia, he still clocks in to clock Derek's shit time and time again, even if the judges want to do Hadi dirty. Chris is certainly entitled to his opinion. I actually like seeing guys get a little testy like this. He can even be a hater, but we all need to recognize that not only is he a hater, but he's also wrong about everything he said in this clip.
People talk about his side chest. He has no arms on the side. He has no triceps. They're blown off his body. He doesn't have a great back double. He has a great back lat spread. Hadi Choopan, I think he's overrated.
Shut up, bitch!